All right, folks, I'm back with another interview today. And today I have a very, very special guest. I have the promoter of Revolution Pro Wrestling. This is super exciting for me, and I think it's exciting for all wrestling fans as we anticipate what could be the greatest weekend of pro wrestling, maybe ever. Obviously, All In is right around the corner, as well as RevPro's 11th anniversary show in Copper Box Arena. Andy, how are you today?
I'm very good, thanks. Yeah, I'm starting to get that feeling, as you approach those big shows. We always say there's almost like a fight atmosphere, akin to those big fight weeks in combat sports when we're kind of fast approaching a show. But this one seems extra special because obviously it will be the biggest show that we've ever produced as Revolution Pro Wrestling as a standalone. But of course, you can't overlook, we're going to be perhaps overshadowed in terms of spectacle, but as I'm sure we get into, not by in-ring and content on the show, the spectacle of the biggest professional wrestling show potentially of all time in AEW All In. So it's just an exciting time to be a pro wrestling fan in general, but also an exciting time to be a fan in the UK, because I really feel like, for years and years, and this dates back to obviously SummerSlam '92 at Wembley Stadium, but then you think about the UK pay-per-views like One Night Only with Bulldog and Michaels, the Monday Night Raws, etc. You think about TNA's biggest houses they ever got were in the United Kingdom, and you think about just a rabid reaction of the fans, and you really feels like UK fans are long overdue something special, not just a we're going to service you with some token wrestling, but something very, very special. And I hope that that's exactly what All In's going to be. And I hope that we, as Revolution Pro Wrestling, can absolutely add to that experience for wrestling fans, especially those traveling from around the globe, because literally we've got so many people from so many different countries attending this show, like yourself.
Yes. I've never done this before of just, travel strictly across the world for a wrestling show. But like I just knew I had to do it. And it wasn't just for All In. It was also because I had been to a Rev Pro show. I knew you guys were gonna cook up something amazing that weekend. And I just knew that like I just had to be in the room. And lo and behold, then you all announced the Copper Box show, and I was vindicated instantly. And the Osprey Shingo match was announced, and I was just like, I really don't even care about the rest of the card at this point. Like, that's more than worth the price of admission. And then the matches keep getting better and better and better as you all announce them. To my knowledge, I think there's five or six currently announced.
Yeah, I think there's 5 announced at the moment.
Yes.
Yeah, so
And
we're halfway there. It's a super show. There's lots of
yes.
matches.
And you all said that I think we're going to shoot for 10 on
Yeah,
this card.
yeah,
And earlier today, which was, the time we're recording this is night 11 of the G1 Climax. And so El Fantasma was just announced to be in the building, to be competing at the Copper Box show. But I want to go to the beginning. How did you get involved in wrestling? And then more specifically, Rev Pro, like, were you there from the absolute beginning, or like, did you get involved later? Like, what was your journey to wrestling?
So my journey, like everyone, I think, who's involved in professional wrestling who hasn't come through the WWE Performance Center, I've been a lifelong professional wrestling fan. I always say, like, wrestling is one of those businesses you can't. You don't get involved. You don't get involved in wrestling unless you're a fan. It's not like a job like like I want to be a doctor, I want to be a fireman, I want to be a policeman, I want to be a YouTuber. You have to be a fan of professional wrestling to be like, I know I can make it. It's not like the old days when you just had to be big and uh, wrestlers go into a nightclub, see a doorman, and be like, "Hey, you should be a wrestler. Come on, come with us." It's not like that anymore. So everyone involved in wrestling, I'd say 95% of people were wrestling fans, and of course, there's different, lengths of time they've been fans. But to get to a certain level, you have to have a certain level of dedication, which often comes with that fandom. And I think that a lot of people within the wrestling industry should be reminded of that fact on numerous occasions, especially the way some people tend to treat fans. And fans should remind each other of that as well. We're all wrestling fans. We're all fans of this niche. And I think that that's, I see tribalism all the time in professional wrestling. I just think it's crazy because deep down we're all fans, and we're all fans of this one thing that the general public outside of our wrestling bubble would probably laugh at. So
Yes.
that's I guess the main start. I was 4 years old when I first kind of was captivated by it, and I can't tell you one thing in particular which drew me in, but it was I guess what wrestling's all about for me. And I guess it's a spectacle, the bright lights, the larger than life characters, the big sounds, the crowd, the atmosphere, just the high octane action, just every single thing about it just appealed to childhood me, and it just sucked me in. And from that day on, I've just consumed my entire life with professional wrestling. Long story short, like from there, I kind of got involved in going to watch British wrestling shows as I was probably early teens. And I always say, like, the beauty of independent professional wrestling. Look, I knew the standard in British, which I guess is kind of important in my story. The standard of British wrestling was not very good. There was no such thing as production levels. It was just it was very much a cheap imitation of WWF as it was at the time. But I still loved it. I still loved being around it. And for me as a child, some of those moments really made my life. And that's not really an exaggeration in any way, shape, or form. I've got so many happy memories of being at these British wrestling shows, which is why I find what we're doing now to be so important. And even the smaller shows that we run, there's always a lot of emphasis on the big shows we run, not so much on the smaller shows we run. But I know how much impact any one of those shows can have on any single child. And if I can pass that love on to anyone, then absolutely, that's exactly what I want to do. I mean, I don't want to kind of go off on a tangent.
You're good. You're good. Keep going.
I mean, you'll probably find throughout the course of this that's what I'm good at, going off on tangents. But I had role models in wrestling that I looked up to, and it just framed so much of my life. And the thing with independent professional wrestling is that you're so close to the action. And I guess I kind of would hang around after the shows, try and talk to the wrestlers. It was there when I first heard some derogatory terms towards fans from wrestlers as well. I didn't know exactly what I was hearing until a lot later on, when I was kind of smartened up. And I was like, those guys are pretty much arseholes, the way they were talking about the fans, especially considering the standard of show they were putting on. And and for me, that mentality has always been one I've hated. So I've always tried to bring in some positivity with what we're doing. But from there, I kind of started talking to the guys. I made some friends. With the fans that start traveling around to all the different shows. I guess as I got to like maybe 15, 16, I started traveling around to different shows, where I could jump on the train, go to shows in London, and travel around a bit. And we'd start to see some familiar faces. And there was one guy who I became friends with called Dan, and Dan Ambrose. I name check him just in case he's listening. I like to kind of give credit to those who I've kind of come up with. And he had done some wrestling training in Portsmouth, which is actually where I live now, coincidentally, which is nowhere where I live, near where I lived then. And he'd done some wrestling training in Portsmouth, and injured his knee, so he was unable to continue his journey in wrestling. But there was a referee training course coming up in Portsmouth, and he wanted someone to come along with him for the weekend. So I said I'd come along with him, and I guess from that point I became a referee. And like I won a referee shirt and a spot refereeing on the next FWA Academy show, and didn't look back from that point. Now, on this journey, I kind of should say FWA at the time was a Frontier Wrestling Alliance, and it was a promotion which is the closest promotion I'm going to say to ECW, in terms of it had that same cult-like following. The fans copied the chants you'd get from ECW. There was the first UK promotion to bring in imports who weren't former WWF superstars. I guess to preface it, like when I started watching it, you used to get on tour people like the Bushwhackers, Marty Jannetty, Jim Neidhart, Jake the Snake, people like that used to come over and be the main draws. But FWA was the first promotion to bring over an AJ Styles, a Jerry Lynn, Christopher Daniels, people like that. And bearing in mind, this was before the days of TNA as well. So it was really hardcore wrestling fan stuff. But they were able to appeal to that fan base. And this was, again, in the days of they were the first promotion to ever take advantage of the internet. But this was like pre your social media, your Twitter, your Facebooks. The forum, the original forum was like a BraveNet forum. Anyone who's old enough to remember those, where you could just enter whatever name you wanted and write your comments. A very dangerous territory for a wrestling promotion. Yeah, I kind of got involved there as a referee, and that was the first place I refereed. And then I started refereeing up and down the country. I just wanted to referee. I just consumed myself with professional wrestling. I just wanted to be around it 24/7. Didn't matter where the show was, I'd be there. I'd be refereeing up and down the country. I put in the work. I emailed promoters constantly. I became certain wrestlers' favorite referee, so they would put me in. I'd jump in cars of wrestlers, to just try and get experience, try and get work. And on that journey, in doing that, that's kind of where and again, I should say my background. I kind of in university, I did, I guess A levels into university, so college into uni. I've always been around theatre. My degree's in media and creative arts. So I've had a love of theatre and a love of professional wrestling. They kind of both go hand in hand. I think wrestling's the ultimate form of theatre, which doesn't get enough credit. But so because of that, and because of that knowledge and that love of theatre, I've kind of always had that interest in the way that shows are put together. I've never been someone who's wanted to become a professional wrestler. I just wanted to be around wrestling. Right? And I guess when I was refereeing, I'd kind of start to understand the way shows flowed. Match placement on the card, who works well with one another, different spots which work well. Where else can we use those spots in other shows? And due to the nature of literally going up and down the country, I was seeing wrestlers from all over the place. There was very much a north-south divide in our country, which I'm sure for American fans is crazy to think. Yeah. Essentially, England is one state in America, but there was very much a north-south divide, and you'd very rarely get so essentially the way the makeup of a show went, and again, I'm bouncing all over the place, so feel free to pull me up at any point, but the way a show went back in those days was you'd essentially have maybe a London car and a Birmingham car. So you'd have two cars, and then you'd have some local talent, or you'd have a Manchester car and a Birmingham car, but you'd only really have two cars and talent, and they'd all be lumped together. So if you were lucky enough to geographically live near someone or near a bunch of workers, then you were more likely to get more work, and that's the way it worked. Now, I was then brought in to IPW as the booker, and this is going back to 2005, I believe. It may be in 2006, but I can't be exact. It's either 2005 or 2006. I was brought in as a booker at IPW. It's the second year of the promotion, so whatever year that was. And I started booking their shows, and they were a promotion that followed an FWA type model in terms of bringing imports over. It was there I first worked with Kevin Steen, El Generico, or Sami Zayn. I can't think who else we used to frequent those shows. It was like guys like Ultimo Dragon. That's where I started booking Pac. There's a real diversity of talent which are kind of on those shows. But that's really where I kind of gained my most experience. And I utilized all the tools that I learned as a referee. I utilized talent from around the country who other people hadn't seen. And I think at the time, FWA there were key names in FWA, you had Alex Shane, you had Johnny Storm, you had Jodie Fleisch, you had Doug Williams, and everything really ran through those four names. So a lot of stuff got very samey. So it's like you bring in a Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles. Who does he work? Oh, well, it's going to be Doug, Johnny, or Josie. Essentially, it was a, you know. Meanwhile, there was this whole crew of young, hungry wrestlers who were just waiting to be noticed and waiting to get an opportunity, who I'd had the fortunate privilege of being able to see in their infancy of their careers. So I was able to bring them in and use them to their fullest. And we're talking about guys like Spuds, who was Drake Maverick in WWF, WWE, Jack Storm, Dave Mastiff, Martin Stone, who was Danny Burch, guys like that, who really were hungry and waiting to make a name for themselves, and really were able to tap into that, and put these guys in those matches in situations where I knew they would be able to excel. So I did that for a while, and then after a while, it was kind of almost like I was spending someone else's money or working with someone else's budgets, and it kind of the short and easy version of a story is it got to the stage where I had to put my money where my mouth was. So I started promoting shows under the IPW banner. I did this for quite some time. It got to the extent that my shows were kind of really what was driving the promotion. We had shows with obviously we were consistently using El Generico, but guys like Young Bucks on the show, Paul London, people like that, and that's where you had like your Zack Sabre Juniors, your Marty Skrull, guys like that, who hadn't broken out into that worldwide scene. And this is a time just before your Will Ospreays came through, so we were kind of really, again, just pushing at the forefront of that modern style of professional wrestling. And we kind of did that for quite some time. And then it got to a point where there was between myself and the owner of IPW, there was a bit of friction in the sense of he wanted to do his thing, which I believed was devaluing what I was trying to do. I'd coined the phrase pro wrestling at its best, which I still use to this day, because I think that kind of personifies what I'm trying to present, which is the highest quality of professional wrestling possible, with the most exciting names from around the world. And coming back full circle to that car thing, I would just be like, I don't really care where the wrestlers are coming from. Let's just bring the best wrestlers. So if we have to bring a Johnny Moss all the way from Cumbria on his own, then let's do it, because it's going to add to the value of the show. And I was one of the first promoters to have the premium priced ticket for your front and second row, which in essence helps cover the cost of those extra expenses that I incurred by literally throwing the rule book out the window. In fact, it's a rule book which has been followed unsuccessfully by a number of promotions who've wound up giving it a go and going out of business in quick fashion, because obviously it's very hard to make it sustainable. And that's something that we've done since day one, is try and make it sustainable. So in terms of, we take baby steps, and we invest in everything we do. So, we try and own as much of our own stuff as possible. So the video cameras, the live edit suite, the rings, the vans, we try and build slowly to create that foundation, where we're in a position where we're able to do stuff like we're doing. We're able to run the schedule like we're running, because we own a lot of the stuff rather than hiring the majority of the stuff in. And it was 2000. It was actually August 26th, 2012 would have been the first Revolution Pro Wrestling show, which is exactly 11 years to the day since we ran to the Copperbox show. So it's almost like it's written in the stars. The 11-year anniversary show, we had to go big, especially when AEW announced what they were doing. So I was kind of inspired by that. But so since 2012, we've been running Revolution Pro Wrestling. My company has been in existence since 2009, and it's just essentially the same company running Revolution Pro Wrestling. We recognized all the champions that we had in IPW. We continue to run the venues that we are running as IPW, but just kind of overnight, all the branding, the name, at the top of a show. It all changed from there. And really, from that point on, there was no looking back. And that's where the growth started to happen, because I was no longer handcuffed to anyone else or anything else. And it was a case of everything was entirely my vision. And I was able to just essentially just keep pushing what I'd been doing for all those years previously, and just take it to another level. And then that's where we found, our home in York Hall, Bethnal Green, which is, the home of British boxing. And yeah, that's where our relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling formed. And then, like I say, it's just growth, growth, growth since day one. Even looking back to IPW to RevPro, everything's been gradual, steady growth. We've certainly not been an overnight success, and we've certainly been doing a lot of it under the radar.
Well, yeah, I can definitely agree that you all have done incredible work. I've been impressed by the partnerships, and just as an American who had never been in the UK, I came to the show by myself because like my friends don't like wrestling. So I was kind of nervous, but it's a really cool environment. And I think that British wrestling has its own vibe. Like you can tell from the crowds, the way that they chant, they sing. And I think RevPro has a very interesting vibe because while there's a balance of like these recognizable names that you might know from like, majors, or, the are popular on the indies, there's still this emphasis on like this young, hungry talent. And so like you might buy a ticket. Like I remember I bought the ticket because Jack Morris was on the card and I'm a Noah fan and that was going to be his first appearance. But I walked away from that event like a huge fan of a JJ Gale or a, Dan Maloney at the time, and other guys like that, who I had never seen before. And so I think that that's a great balance that you all have. And so I see that balance on the card so far for Copperbox. So what is the thought process behind booking, of yes, you have the relationship with New Japan Pro Wrestling. Obviously, that's going to sell a lot of tickets, but it's also about putting this young, hungry talent in a position to succeed because they're going to be in front of eyes that have never seen them before.
Yeah, well, obviously, we're being an independent, and kind of, again, I think people maybe don't understand the I think they think we're bigger than we are, which I guess is a credit to us because of what we're trying to achieve. And yes, this is very much full time for myself, but I am doing the job of like probably 50 men. It's not even an exaggeration. There's teams of people put together the stuff that I kind of put together. And I think that with that in mind, we're kind of we're always wary of the fact that something can happen. So, for example, when NXT UK came along and it took a lot of talent, and so we're always wary that we have to be ready to kind of keep having that depth so we can keep growing. Of course, we want all our wrestlers to kind of get to the next level, and be seen by the wrestling world, because of course the more people that see, so you just referenced Dan Maloney, who's obviously one of our regulars who's just gone to New Japan, and people can see that Dan Maloney's very much the real deal right now. But I want people to see Dan Maloney and then be like, oh, where did he come from? Let's look. Oh, it's Rev Pro, and look at his matches, and you might see Dan Maloney against JJ Gale, and because you've seen you've seen Dan Maloney in New Japan, and now all of a sudden, like, you see JJ Gale and your eyes are opened up to him. So it's very important for us to keep a pipeline of talent coming through. But also, as I'm getting older, I see it more of my responsibility of I think a lot about legacy. I think a lot about what I may leave behind. And my intentions are so pure. I genuinely just want to do the best for professional wrestling, and it would be nice to be acknowledged for being able to do that. So so I know that my kind of life's work, essentially, because I've been boy to man doing this, I'd like to think that my life's work was worthwhile, and I have achieved something. I've been able to achieve something, and I think that's why is such an emphasis on trying to bring talent through, trying to help the industry as a whole, and make sure the foundations are solid. Now, of course, when you're booking young talent, there are certain sacrifices you make. So, as you say, people are attracted to the names. So it would be very easy for me to just, gravitate towards those big names and forget about the younger talent. But then what are you going to do when those bigger names they go off and do bigger and better things, or they're not here next week, they're not here the week after, or so what are you going to do? So we have to make sure we have that solid foundation, and that's what we do. And I kind of try to play to wrestlers' strengths. I try to look at their areas of weakness and try and work out how we can improve. We have two training schools. We've got one in London, one in Portsmouth. We're constantly working on with our top pros as well. We're working on their development always, and I believe we're producing well-rounded professional wrestlers, and we're putting them in environments where they've got the opportunity to, and I never take success for a wrestler's accomplishments. So if I put a wrestler out there, they succeed or fail based upon their own merits. But what I do is I give them a platform to be able to do that, and I give them the guidance to be able to improve and to make themselves better. And we have a degree of patience with them, because we know that they're not going to be able to knock it out the park each and every time. We know that they're prone to sometimes making a mistake, or have teachable moments in their careers, and it's very important to have that patience. But but ultimately, because we think long term instead of short term, we become the real winners. Because you see it, like, just coming through right now, our talent roster has never been deeper. It's also never been younger, and you look at guys like Leon Slater, Cameron Kai, JJ Gale, Maya Matthews, these young professional wrestlers who are just hungry, and that's not even naming half of them, and our future's in very safe hands because of that fact. One thing I always say is, the generation, like your Zack Sabre Jr. generation, into your Will Ospreay generation, I guess, so Zack would have to learn from your likes of Johnny Storm, Jody Fleisch, Doug Williams, etc. So that next generation was Spuds, Jack Storm, Dave Mastiff. Jack Storm doesn't wrestle anymore, but he was an extremely talented wrestler. That's why he always springs to mind. But guys like Martin Stone, they're the people who kind of almost were the teachers for the next generation, and that next generation were your Will Ospreays, etc. And Will was able to learn from the likes of the people we were able to bring in for him to work as well, like Matt Sydal, Kazuchika Okada, people like that, Ricochet, AJ Styles, so Will was able to have that benefit of learning from him. But now Will's in a situation where he is the AJ Styles, he is the Matt Sydal, so he's able to pass that knowledge on to the next generation. And that's why I believe we've been so successful as well, because we've got to see people who are so hungry to give back. Zack Sabre Jr., Will Ospreay, they don't need to be working these shows for Revolution Pro Wrestling. They do it because they want to. They do it because they want to give back, and they're actively giving back. And that's, I guess, one of the coolest things about it, and I don't know. I just feel like that's why there's such strength. And I hope that, those people coming through now who we've name checked earlier, hopefully they will have that same mindset of your Will Ospreays, your Zack Sabre Juniors, and then they'll be able to teach the next generation. Because the more people that the generations that follow have to learn from, the stronger and stronger the depth of talent gets. And controversially, I'm going to say I think that the depth of talent that we have is stronger than the United States independence at the moment. I think there's a lot of reasons behind that, but I genuinely feel that you'll probably see promoters from overseas dipping into that UK base again, like they did in the past, because they're so well rounded, they're so polished, and I'm proud of them all. I really am.
Yes, I think you should be. And I mean, I can see it just because just being like in that environment, like there's so much raw talent there. Like, and even just like, I feel like there's something you can get from UK wrestling that is so different from all the other different wrestling markets. Like, even seeing like somebody like Yota Tsuji, who's still on Excursion, like the character that he's doing now in New Japan that is just like, taken over, he really kind of crafted that and really came into his own at RevPro, like, on excursion, really figuring out, like, who he was. And so, like, I think that it's been a very great opportunity. RevPro is just a great opportunity, I think, for a lot of talent to, just blossom and grow. Like, I think that Leon Slater is going to take over the world one day. Like, he's absolutely insane. Like, you have Cameron Kai, like you said. And one thing that I've noticed is that a lot of these names are pretty diverse, which I don't think that I immediately assumed or associated with British wrestling. Like, I didn't expect to see as many, multicultural, specifically Black faces on one card as I did. And so I've noticed that it seems like the scene is starting to get more diverse, or maybe you are just great at recruiting talent because you have some excellent, excellent Black wrestlers on the roster. So is that something that's important, for you to, showcase the diversity of the scene as you book shows? Because, like, you have some awesome wrestlers right now.
Yeah, so well, this is kind of, I guess, maybe one of my bugbears. Like, I hate the mentality of, you know, have I specifically gone out and recruited Black faces, for lack of a better term? The answer is no. Like, every single person is there because they're great professional wrestlers. Now, I think that that's the most important thing for me, is that everyone's there on merit and merit alone, and everyone knows they're there on merit and merit alone. I think one of the I think I'm going to take it as a compliment, the fact that you're like, I wouldn't necessarily associate, British wrestling with so many different cultures and backgrounds, because I just want it to be normal. I want it to be just accepted as a norm. I don't want to have to shine a light on it and say, hey, look at this person of ethnic origin competing. Hey, look, there's not one, there's two, there's three, there's four. I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be everyone, every single person that is there on merit, on talent, on ability. They know they've earned their spot. Every single person, male or female, Black or white, they know they're on the card because they've earned their spot. And really, I have to be ruthless in that respect, because that's the only way you're going to get the very best.
Absolutely.
And I feel that that's so important. Now, what I will say is, obviously, the more Black faces you see, the more you're going to get long term down the line. The more you're going to get, the more women that are going to be on the shows, the more you're going to get down the line, because it's a knock-on effect. Now, me speaking from personal experience, I had, should we say, an unintentional bias when I was younger towards Black wrestlers, which my friends used to mock me about, right? And it wasn't until I got older. And I mean, I'm not going to lie, I feel like during the whole pandemic and the Black Lives Matter, I think for me, like, it wasn't really until then that I ever had any kind of period of reflection. And I think that, again, I don't want to kind of get too deep here.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah.
But I feel like a lot of stuff I would have, let's say I'm less tolerant towards racism now than I ever was before. I was always the guy that would laugh it off. I was always the guy that would be like, nah, whatever, let them, let them continue to be ignorant, right? But I've since kind of learned that education and discussion is a key to any of life's problems, not just race, right? I think any of life's problems. And I feel like one thing that our society is very good at is picking a side, one side or the other, right? It's either you're pro Black Lives Matter or you're a full-on racist. That's kind of often the mentality. When there's definitely a grey area in between, and there's definitely room for discussion around the subject, which I think that people often just disregard. And I'm not sure how this relates to wrestling, but but wrestling's life. Life is wrestling. But I guess when I was so in that period of reflection, I kind of realised that this thing that my friends mocked me for, being like, oh, you just like him because he's black. Maybe is an element of truth to that, right? Because we all look towards people that we can relate to.
Absolutely.
So when Ron Simmons won the WCW Heavyweight Championship, I was super pumped like I'd never been before. I didn't know why. I just thought I loved Ron Simmons because I loved Ron Simmons. But obviously, I could relate to Ron Simmons, right? And I think that's obviously very important as well. And that is why representation is important, right? But obviously, again, I say it has to be on merit, right? And the reason why you suddenly get more faces appear is because we're all influenced by someone or something. It's like, I believe the reason why the talent pool. So in British wrestling, we had a big boom around 2005. Not 2000, maybe 2009 to 2000, and I don't know, maybe even later, 2012. Let's say when RevPro's started. Say 2012 to 2018, it was somewhat of a boom for British professional wrestling, right? Now, I credit the Attitude Era with that, right? And the reason why is because wrestling became more mainstream during that time. Wrestling became more acceptable. Wrestling became more visible. And as a result, more people went to wrestling schools, right? Mm-hmm. And then your first wave of people, you're not necessarily going to have the same level of talent. But then, as I said, we learn from a generation before. And the more people there are to learn from, the more you're going to learn, the better you're going to get. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. It's great to learn from other people's mistakes, right? And I think that the same, I think, happened overseas as well. Wrestling it was just a global phenomenon overnight, all of a sudden, and I think because of that, there became a huge depth of talent. Now, that's why the talent levels were so strong. Now, obviously, it dictates that the number of say ethnic faces, and I mean, I'm going to include women in this as well. Mm-hmm. The number increases, and you just need to be inspired by someone or something. So before, a whole generation was inspired by people walking around shouting "suck it" and whatever else it was. That's what people were inspired by. But now it might be the feats of athleticism from a Leon Slater, for example, right? And you see a Leon Slater, you see a Michael Oku, you get inspired by them. And if people can relate to them, like Leon Slater says, Michael Oku was his hero. Like, Michael Oku's been doing this thing for like 5 years. Yet Michael Oku was Leon Slater's hero when he was coming through, because Michael Oku obviously got on shows a little bit before. Because I think Leon Slater could relate to him a little bit.
Absolutely.
And these faces have got the opportunity to influence the next generation. And as that happens, so that, the more people of color that can relate to those people, the more that will come through the training school. Now, just entering the training school as a person of color doesn't dictate that you get a pass. It doesn't dictate that all of a sudden you get on shows, you get fast tracked. There's such thing as positive discrimination as well, right? The whole thing's ridiculous. It's about talent levels, right? And obviously, the more people of any race that get involved, the more people of that race are more likely to inspire. You inspire more people, it's a numbers game. You're Absolutely. More likely to find better talent. So that's what's happened. It's not a case of, ticking boxes. It's not a case of, oh, you need to put, we need to make the poster look more ethnic. We need to make the poster look more colorful. It's a case of we're putting people there based on merit, but in doing so, we're naturally encouraging the next generation to get involved and to understand there is no ceiling, right? And to have that open mind to all talent, is the most important thing. And I think that was one of the most important things in life, to have an open mind, to be open to discussion. And whilst we're there as well, I think that having people in those positions be open to that discussion, because I always found it so uncomfortable. But even now, there's people who are going to disagree with my stance, right? You may disagree with my stance, and that's absolutely fine. It's a discussion, right? But I think that because it's such a divisive subject, and like I said, like, people always sit on one side of the wall or the other rather than being open to that discussion, it makes it very difficult for people to speak about, because no one wants to find themselves in that situation where they're in the middle of some kind of controversy, and look, I've always said I will always speak the truth. I will always speak my truth, because my truth may be different to someone else's experience. So that's all I can do, because if you speak your truth, you don't have to worry about getting caught up in lies, in spin and whatever have you. So yes, I'm a professional wrestling promoter, but everything I say, I truly believe. I'm not spinning in hyperbole. I'm not saying that this show is going to be the best because I'm trying to sell tickets. I'm saying this show is going to be the best because I genuinely believe it. And I think just everything just goes hand in hand. And I think that, yeah, if anything can be taken from that last God knows how long of rambling, hopefully it's just that people can have that discussion. And I feel that it is a very deep subject. It really is. And there's so many different aspects of it we can look at. And I do think it's very important to highlight, people's journeys, people's struggles, and be able to discuss them, because discussion leads to understanding, understanding leads to tolerance, and that's it basically. And it's just we've got to remember, ultimately at its most base level, every single person's a human being, and everyone has bad days. We have to remember that. And when we're judging people, so much, when we're judging people, don't judge someone on their lowest point. Don't judge someone on, if you write a book, you don't want someone to judge you on the worst chapter of your book. You want them to judge you across the whole thing, and we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all learn lessons. And I think that if we start accepting that more and learning and trying to educate ourselves and trying to understand better and accepting that other people are going to have other opinions, then I think just the world's going to be a much nicer place. So, public service message as well.
I do think that, talking about race and wrestling, diversity, period, anything in wrestling is so difficult. But I do agree with what you said as far as like, we're going to see this generation teach the next generation and just go on and so forth. And I'm actually really excited to see the future, because I think like so many people will be inspired just by, seeing someone who looks like them, and not just, black faces, women, like as you said, like just having, more opportunities just be available for everyone across the board. It's going to continue to trickle down, I would say, in the future. And like even this generation of wrestling period looks completely different than the last. And like hopefully we continue to evolve and grow as we go forward. But speaking of going forward, the actual show. So Copper Box is a pretty big venue. What was the thought process behind booking a venue that large? Just because obviously, I know All In is definitely inspiring, go big or go home, but this is a great undertaking for our RevPro, but not an impossible one, because like I said, this card is pretty awesome and it's not even finished yet.
Yeah, well, I feel like a lot of it was All In. I'm not going to lie. So, like, obviously, when they announced they were running, of course, we'd try to put something on around the same time as them. And of course, our easy option would have just been to run York Hall, But when you see, and again, look, AEW have much wider resources than us. They have a much bigger net. And look, if I had AEW's resources, then the world would be a different place right now. I'd probably tropical island right now. But but the the thing is, seeing them go for Wembley Stadium, they could have gone for the easy option. They went for the more difficult option. That kind of stuff is inspiring. And again, you can say whatever you like about Tony Khan, but I absolutely have to give him all the credit in the world for having, quite frankly, the ball, like literally, not just the balls to run Wembley Stadium, but the balls to go up against Vince McMahon, the balls to go up against WWE. You know, he dreamt big, and sure, he may have had the resources, but look, Tony Khan's a busy man. And
Yeah.
I'm sure Tony Khan's got a lot of hobbies as well. And I'm sure Tony Khan's got a lot of things he could be spending his money on. And I'm sure he's got a lot of surer bets he could be spending his money on. But he's just like all of us. He's been bitten by that professional wrestling bug. And that kind of stuff is inspiring, you know. And to see them running all in at Wembley Stadium, not Wembley Arena. Everyone thought that they'd misheard something, or AEW had made the biggest gaffe of all time. You know, I'm going to have to backtrack and say, sorry, when we said Wembley Stadium, we actually meant Wembley Arena. But no, they said it, they meant it, and they've gone through with it. And that's really the kind of spirit that AEW was born in. That's a spirit of the original All In. And when they are delivering an event of that size, to me, and they're bringing it to the UK, to me, I feel a responsibility as someone who's involved in the UK wrestling industry to try and add to what they're doing, right? Yes, it's a great commercial opportunity for us, but we could have taken an easier route, you know, a more of a sure thing. We could have run, for example, Crystal Palace was another venue that we had booked for that weekend. Like, I booked several venues. I had a lot of ideas, and I wanted to kind of I guess have options to fall back on should one thing not work out. But I just kind of knew it had to be, like I said, when you announced it, go big or go home. It had to be Copperbox, you know. And yes, it is a huge risk, but it's also a huge opportunity.
Absolutely.
And hopefully, I'm really hoping, because look, everyone who knows about Revolution Pro Wrestling, they've got their tickets by now, right? But hopefully now we can get to the fans who haven't made their mind up yet, who don't know about independent professional wrestling, who don't know about RevPro, who don't know about British wrestling. Hopefully we can start to get those fans now, and have those fans recognize the huge opportunity, or not say the huge, you know, look, you're wrestling fans, you're in London, you know, what else are you going to do on a Saturday night?
Literally.
So, you know, so this is what we're trying to achieve. But it's like I say, it's a whole mentality of, you know, if you risk nothing, you risk everything. It's one of my favorite sayings, right? Everything I do and have done since day one has been a huge risk, a calculated risk, but a huge risk nonetheless. Okay, so I just feel that let's create something that leaves people talking. Well, we could run a run-of-the-mill show. We could be sold out by now. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm not worrying about it. I'm worrying about next month. I'm worrying about the month after. But instead, I'm still consumed with August 26th. I'm still worried about it. I'm still working on it. We're still pushing it, because I want to make the most of this opportunity and create a lasting moment, a lasting impression. I want to create fans for life. And I know we've got a lot of fans who are traveling from around the world to see the show, and they may not be able to come to see every single Rev Pro show, but I want them to make them fans enough that they then subscribe to our on-demand service. You know, I just want to keep, it's just a part of the evolution, part of the process in growing. And, you know, the fact it was 11 years to the day since we literally announced our arrival as a professional wrestling promotion is a big part of this as well. Like I say, written in the stars almost. But in addition, our 10-year anniversary weekend last year, we weren't able to celebrate in the way I would have liked. We still put on, don't get me wrong, we put on 2 shows. They were great professional wrestling shows, but the build, the lineups, everything wasn't what it was originally intended to be, because I nearly died a couple of months before.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So again, boom, right? But that was like July. So we did our Summer Sizzler show, July 23rd in Manchester, and July 24th I was hospitalized. I was like, I was ill and getting sicker and sicker in the lead up to this thing. And literally, I'd only just got, like, I think August, maybe the second week of August was my first show. We did the show at the 229, which I wasn't at. The second week of August, and I was overdoing it then, was my first days back out in the wild when we did our show in Southampton on that second week of August. And so we weren't able to celebrate that 10-year anniversary show the way we would have liked. And it almost feels like, yeah, look, don't get me wrong, I'd rather pass by that nearly dying part, but you know, it kind of feels like at least there almost was a reason, because now we can have the proper celebration and we can do it in a proper big way. And that's what we fully intend August 26th to be. You're seeing names from our past coming back, former champions coming back. As you said, we've just announced El Phantasmo's coming back. He's not the only former champion who's going to be coming back. And we're able to do it properly, and we're able to do it in style. And I genuinely hope, look, we've kind of passed, we've had levels of where we kind of want to get to. And our minimum expectation, which is our minimum requirement to get to not go bankrupt, basically, because that's what it is. You know, that's for us what this undertaking is, and we've passed that now, right? So now we've got our next goal that we're aiming to hit, and hopefully we do that, and then we can, you know, go full steam ahead and try and get all the way there. But we'll see what happens. But like I say, like I'm kind of so pumped and excited. And I want to do something that is that leaves a lasting impression. There's a lot of stuff going on around that weekend, including obviously All In. Again, look, we can't compete for it with spectacle. And I always look at WrestleMania weekend as the example, you know, and WrestleMania is a firework display at the end of a celebration of wrestling. Like I say, we want to be a big part of that celebration. We also want to be a part of the celebration which is talked about. Think about the amount of events that go on around WrestleMania weekend. How many at the time? We're buzzing, we're loving it. I love WrestleMania weekend; it's one of my favorite times, and we are loving it, right? But there's so many fantastic Speedball Mike Bailey matches that we can't think about which one was our favorite. You know,
yes,
our one moment. Because there's literally 20 of them in one weekend.
Some like 5 in one day.
So, you know, I want to be that show that people walk away from that weekend talking about. And I want to be that show that come the end of the weekend, once we've seen Wembley, I still want people to be talking about our show. Because from an in-ring perspective, I don't think there's any touch in it. You know, we're not going to be, like I say, we're not going to be able to compete with a spectacle. But from an in-ring perspective, we absolutely will compete. And I know the atmosphere for the people that are inside the building and that on that night, I know they will create a special atmosphere. And I think pound for pound, they will be able to compete. So like I say, we're not going to be able to surpass All In, but we're going to be able to be in the conversation of that weekend when the weekend's over. And, you know, and like I say, hopefully we'll create a lot of new wrestling fans in the process. And hopefully we'll prove something to ourselves about, yes, we can do it. Yes, we can do something of this size. And hopefully the reviews we get and feedback we get, hopefully that will encourage us to continue to push further. And that's all we can do. Again, we're on a journey right now. And can that journey be accelerated if we have a sponsor come in and pump in loads of money? Absolutely it can. Can it be accelerated if a TV company comes in and says, here's loads of money? Absolutely it can. But if none of those things happen, my pure intent is we'll still be here. We'll still be plugging away. We'll still be working hard. You know, and 11 years ago when we started Revolution Pro Wrestling, if you asked me where we'd be, I wouldn't be able to give you an exact answer, but I'd tell you we'll still be here. And if you ask me where we're going to be 10 years from now, I'll tell you the same answer. You know, we'll still be here, we'll still be growing, hopefully bigger than we were yesterday. And that's all we're comparing ourselves to. That's all we're trying to achieve.
I love that energy. I'm so excited for the show. This is one of my last questions, but what do you hope to be the lasting impact of this weekend on the UK and just European wrestling? Like this, like you said, this is probably the closest thing to WrestleMania weekend, possibly even bigger. What do you hope? Just because there's been a lot going on, I think, in the UK wrestling scene between between COVID, hello, NXT UK, speaking out, a whole lot of things. And obviously, like UK wrestling has been in this rebuilding phase. And so this is a huge opportunity. And not just Rev Pro, obviously All In, Pro Wrestling Eve, Progress, other places. Like, what do you hope is the lasting impact on the scene after this weekend?
I hope it just reminds people that there is a scene, and I think that it's like it is a huge opportunity to showcase exactly what the British wrestling scene is all about. And I hope no one takes this opportunity for granted or takes it lightly, running run of the mill shows, because this is an opportunity. This is a shop window to remind people, to remind the wrestling world that the British wrestling scene on its day is one of the best in the world. We don't look geographically. It's going to be very hard for the British wrestling scene to compete, because geographically we don't have the number of people, we don't have the number of mid-sized buildings in order to be able to, have a territory that's able to, pop every single night, But I hope it enlivens fans, and I hope it lights a fire amongst fans, and I hope that fans realise that the only difference between us and getting to that next level is a fan support. Because if people support it and support it with positivity, then I think there's no end to the limits of what we can achieve. So, me personally, I just hope that we leave a positive, lasting impression. And I hope, and this is maybe my biggest hope, I hope that people realize, I hope that AEW realize, and I hope that wrestling fans realize that this is something that can be an annual event or a biannual event. And
Yeah.
I knew when this was announced, anyone who asked me, again, that whole telling the truth always thing, or my truth always thing, anyone who asked me, if they asked me how I thought the show was going to do, I said it would sell out or near enough. And everyone was like, you're crazy, you're mad. And I was like, no, because what this is in terms of AEW at Wembley is it's an event, it's an occasion. There's nothing more that British people love than an occasion, right? But Anthony Joshua is a brand. I don't know how familiar you may or may not be with that with Anthony Joshua, but in the UK, Anthony Joshua is a brand. Tyson Fury is a brand. But I go back to AJ because AJ has had several sellout houses at Wembley Stadium against relative unknown opponents. It's about the Anthony Joshua show, Anthony Joshua at Wembley. Yet his next fight is at the O2. Sold out straight away, but the fight before was also at the O2. Didn't sell out straight away. But Wembley, instant sellouts. Because it's AJ at Wembley. It's that big fight atmosphere. It's that big fight feeling. It's an occasion. It's an event. And I genuinely feel that people will get behind. It doesn't forget WWE's like, oh, let's run WrestleMania at Wembley. Look, we all know what that was all about, right?
Yeah.
Like, to me, look, if they're going to do it, just get ahead and do it. Do you know what I mean? I'd welcome them. I'd love them to do it, right? But to me, like, I feel that, and again, there's obviously other places, London Stadium, they could run, Tottenham Stadium, they could run, in terms of big stadiums in London where you could run a big event of that scale. But to me, look, it's not about, I feel like one thing I love about the Wembley thing as well with AEW is it's not about getting that smash and grab, the whatever government funding they can get to run a show. They've literally funded it off their own back. I love that spirit because that's what that's what we do. We fund everything off our own back, right? And I feel that if people realise the enormity of the event, if AEW can deliver an event like no other, and it's a huge pressure to be able to do, but people want that feeling. People want that atmosphere. And if we can contribute by putting on these shows, there's Q&As, there's after parties, there's wrestling shows, there's autograph signings, meet and greets, there's all these activities going on. And and wrestling fans want that destination. And I think that a summer in London is a great destination. And I really hope that it can continue. And I hope that, this whole weekend can create that lasting impression. Because I don't know about you, but as a wrestling fan, I'm always chasing that feeling. You know,
Yeah.
there's nothing like being in that crowd, that moment. You know, I do commentary on the majority of our shows. You can often see me jumping up and down, right? Because that's a feeling. That's a feeling that professional wrestling can give you. And I guess I'm talking to wrestling fans here. And if you've just stumbled upon this podcast, how random. But every single wrestling fan can relate to that feeling when the hairs on the back of your arm stand up, you get goosebumps. You know, it's you want to hug the stranger next to you. You know, the last time that happened for us, that was our last show at York Hall when Mike Loku won the heavyweight championship from Great O'Khan. Grown adults jumping up and down and hugging each other. You know, it's almost like it's live sport in general that is able to give you that feeling. I say, like, I get suckered into the Olympics all the time. You know, there's all kinds of taekwondo was one of the ones that I got into during the last Olympic Games. I was a huge fan for about half an hour, right? Highest of highs and lowest of lows, and an emotional roller coaster. That's what live sport can do for you. But wrestling's like none other because, and again, it's like we've just had Wimbledon over here. Again, it's like people are having to hang on to their, hold themselves, compose themselves until the end of each point, right? And then they're able to clap, and then they've got to die down. And then they're able to clap, and they've got to die down, right? Musical theatre, fantastic. No art form like it, apart from professional wrestling, which I would argue is better, right? Theatre, you have to wait till the end of the musical number until you can show your appreciation, show your applause. You're allowed to quietly cry. You're allowed to quietly have tears rolling down your cheeks, but you're not allowed to sob. You're not allowed to shout at the villain on the stage, right? Wrestling is that instant gratification. You have a hard day at work, take it out on the wrestlers.
Truly.
Lose yourselves. You can literally lose yourselves. It's an all immersive experience where you're witnessing superhuman feats before your very eyes, which are breathtaking under the best of circumstances. But you're also allowed to shout, you're allowed to scream, you're allowed to stomp your feet, you're allowed to clap your hands, you're allowed to get lost in that, in that time. And I think that this is what I want people to walk away with. And you know what? I hope as well. I hope we get some curious bystanders. Because even for us, you're going to get it at Wembley for sure. Because it's just an event at Wembley Stadium. And like I say, the Brits love an occasion. So you're going to get non-wrestling fans. You're going to get lapsed fans. You're going to get fans who are just like, oh yeah, I remember SummerSlam 92. Or I remember DX. I remember Stone Cold Steve Austin. Who haven't got a clue what the AEW product is. Right? You're going to get those fans come along to the show. And I hope that we can pick up a few of those fans as well. Because obviously, running the Copper Box Arena is still a big deal. It's obviously not the size of your Wembley, but it's still a big deal. It's a major arena. It's an Olympic legacy venue. It's a brand new state-of-the-art arena. And I hope that we get some of those people as well. And they get that feeling. Because when you get that feeling, there's nothing like it. And there's really no turning back. So, hopefully we can create some fans for life. Hopefully we can reinvigorate some lapsed fans. Because hopefully there'll be fans who haven't watched since the pandemic. Because that's another thing as well, isn't it? It's habit. Viewing habits. So people who got in the habit of, coming to watch us once a month in London or, coming to our big York Hall shows, they fell out of that habit when the pandemic came, smacked us all across the face, right? And hopefully, and there'll be a lot of people who this will be their first show back. And hopefully it's not going to be one of those things where people go like, oh yeah, that was fun. I enjoyed that. That was a nice firework display. No, we want it to be something that hooks them and wants them to come back again and again and again and again. And we want to get bitten by that bug again. So really the potential, the opportunity for every single person running that weekend is absolutely huge. You just got to put your best foot forward. And all you need to do is look at our lineup. The reason we came out with Shingo and Ospreay as a first match before anything else, sign of intent. It wasn't saying that this is going to be, the best match on the card, and it very may well be, 5 matches and the lowest rating a match has got by Dave Meltzer is 5 stars. You can put whatever weight you want into star ratings, but at the end of the day, yeah, if you're looking at that barometer, then it shows you the caliber of what you've got to expect. And look, if you don't like that style of wrestling, you've got Zack Sabre Jr., the best technician in the world wrestling. So many diversities of styles, and there's gonna be something for everyone. Like I say, we're putting our best foot forward, and I hope that everyone can just look at that lineup. You can see we're putting our best foot forward, and you just give us a go. Like, even if, like, what have you got to lose apart from about 30 quid? You got nothing to lose. Come and give us a go, and I guarantee you'll be entertained. I guarantee you'll get your money's worth. And if you buy an expensive ticket, you'll get even better value for money, because you're going to get better seats, better atmosphere. Just give me more money, basically.
Yeah, listen, I feel that exact same way as a fan. It's that feeling. I feel like when they announced Wembley, I was like, oh, like, this is it gives you hope. Like, it's just like, I always root for the underdogs, and it's like, I always root for the underdog, and just like, this is brave. And I even, like, when you all, like, announced that Shingo Ospreay match, I said, oh, they're laying down the gauntlet. Like, if this is the first match, I'm like, oh, they're not playing. Like, they are not playing. And it makes you giddy as a wrestling fan. And so my last question is for you is, out of the matches that have been announced, or if you want to announce, another one here, which one is your current favorite that you're most excited to see as a fan?
That's an impossible question. I'm going to say the match that I'm most looking forward to is actually JJ Gale versus Kotei Fujita.
Me too! That's mine too!
So yeah, because I'll tell you why as well. So I think stylistically, they match up very well with each other. We say stars make matches all the time. So I think from that standpoint, it's going to be very interesting and very intriguing. I also think that I love the story of JJ coming for Zack Sabre Jr., and Zack Sabre Jr. throwing obstacles in his way. And I think that so it's got an inbuilt story in and of itself. And that's something that we've always tried to do as well. We don't just try to, when we bring in imports, it's not just a case of, here comes special attraction A. We try to write them into what we're doing. Colt Cabana was one of our champions for a long time. But it was all written in, when he became a champion, he dethroned Charles Samuels. But it was a deal of, if I can't win, I will leave the UK forever. And he won the championship. And there's a whole great story which involved Colt Cabana then winding up losing the championship and then wrestling against Gideon Gray and finding himself in a situation whereby if he loses to Gideon Gray, who was on the most illegitimate winning streak in the whole of professional wrestling, like he was like Goldberg, he was on a streak, and if he couldn't beat Gideon Gray, he said he would leave forever. And look, he lost, and Matt Classic came back, and then there was the thing of they would reinstate him if Matt Classic and Colt Cabana could appear at the same place in the same time, and someone who resembled, I'm going to say, a certain Grado appeared in the Matt Classic mask, and Colt Cabana was there. Just a whole story, which you should look up on RevProOnDemand.com for sure. Right? That's just an example of one of the stories we tell. So JJ Gale and Kosei Fujita, it's got an inbuilt story, despite the fact they've never met before. And in terms of development of professional wrestlers, I think they're at very similar stages in their career. And again, it's one of those things of JJ Gale isn't the most well-known professional wrestler, but this is his opportunity to have a coming out story. This is his opportunity to show the wrestling world exactly what he's made of. And what also excites me a lot, and when I say, I don't say these words lightly, I like to be proved correct. So if you look back at any interviews I've done over the years, and when you ask me about talents, and I would have been singing the praises of Will Ospreay in 2013. I was a person who put Will Ospreay against Kazuchika Okada in front of Gedo and opened the door to New Japan. he was the one who had the ability to force himself through the door and invite himself those return bookings, etc. But I knew the talent was there. I knew he was a future superstar. People were telling me, no, he's not. He's just all flips or whatever. You know, people were trying to dissuade me to him on him and try and push me towards other wrestlers. But I knew Will Ospreay was special, and I knew that because each and every show he competed in, he would learn from the match before, and he'd take something from the match before into his next contest. And it's no secret. You see Will Ospreay in his matches. You see him using the phenomenal forearm. You see him using the Rainmaker. You see him using the shooting star press. Well, not so much anymore, but you know, before you saw him using the shooting star press. You've seen him use the V trigger. You know, all moves of wrestlers, high-profile wrestlers that he'd faced, and then he took something from and added it to his game. And it wasn't just moves; it was lessons. And I was singing his praises then, and I was proved correct. And I'm singing JJ Gale's praises now, the same way I'll sing Leon Slater's praises. You know, he's a future superstar, and I think this is one of those matches. And I say this a lot, but you know, look, I think this is one of those matches that we're going to look back on 5-10 years from now, and this match could well be taking place, say, at the Tokyo Dome or Madison Square Garden or at Wembley Stadium, you know, for RevPro at Wembley Stadium. But this is one of those matches that we can see again in a bigger building and, you know, with the stakes higher. Where did that match first take place? It took place in Revolution Pro Wrestling, August 26th, 11-year anniversary show at the Copper Box. This show's going to have historical significance, is what I would say as a betting man. And I think that this is one of those contests that shouldn't be overlooked because of that fact, let alone the fact they're both supremely talented. They're both very, very hungry. Fujita, absolutely no doubt, wants to show. Look, when professional wrestlers are young lion, they're kind of restricted into what they can, restricted with what they're able to do, what they're able to showcase.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's down to time limits and, you know, and move sets, etc. And Fujita's almost being fast tracked through that system, and he's going to be eager to show the wrestling world exactly what he's all about. And it's one of those things where you've got two guys. Look, don't get me wrong, it's going to go one way or the other. And this is, again, one of those moments. It's such a pivotal point in both men's careers, because this is going to show you if they've got what it takes. And again, if they don't, if it's not a great match, if it, you know, it's not the end of the world. It's a lesson learned, right? Mm-hmm. But if I'm a betting man, look, they're both on this card for a reason, right? And that's because I believe in both of them. And obviously New Japan believe in enough in Fujita to want him to take part in this situation where they know there's going to be all these eyeballs on him. And for me, like, I feel like for the significance in their career progression, the way they handle this, they're going to be feeling energy like they've not felt before. You know, we talk about all the time about an adrenaline dump. It's a very real thing, you know. There's going to be nerves. There's going to be a degree of confidence. They're going to have to resist the urge to go 100 miles an hour. You know, there's all these different elements to the match which make it so exciting. And again, from that historical perspective, I think it's so important for people to be there, you know, and see that match. And so to me, you know, I could go with an easy option, but look, we know Ospreay and Shingo is going to be spectacular, right? I'm equally as excited. Look, everything on the show I'm excited for, because when you say like Ishii and Luke Jacobs, I'm so excited for Luke Jacobs to have that opportunity to showcase. But, you know, we know Ishii never misses, right? And
never.
And Luke Jacobs is very similar. You know, I can't think of a bad Luke Jacobs professional wrestling match. And I think people will start to realize that. And hopefully people will see that match and then be like, my God, who is this Luke Jacobs? I need to see more, you know? And then we've got Michael Oku and Trent Seven. It's going to be great, you know? And it's a huge task for Michael. His first championship defense, two Brits. Trent Seven's got a degree of notoriety, sure, but two Brits on the card. um, on a show which is filled with imported talent, and Michael Oku's first championship defense, and he feels a huge responsibility towards that champion after that journey. People always think it's all about the journey, it's all about the journey, and then they forget about the destination. Once you get to that destination, the next chapter starts. So it's huge pressure on Michael Oku's shoulders as well. But you'd bet on him to deliver. Every single member of the roster you'd bet on to deliver, and that's why it's so exciting. So look, I started by naming one match, but I'm going to cheat and just be like all of them. But yeah, Gal and Fujita for kind of that historical purposes and excitement purposes and being a fresh first time match purposes. And again, is this a match which is going to open up the wrestling world to JJ Gale? That's another exciting thing, because I guess anyone who was there's no secret, anyone who was in Reading in October 2013, or maybe no, it wasn't 13, was it? 2015, I believe, when Will Ospreay fought Kazuchika Okada. Anyone who was in Reading on that day, they know they witnessed history, because that's the match that opened the door for Will Ospreay heading to New Japan Pro Wrestling and starting his real journey of becoming the best wrestler in the world. And I believe that, we could say the same about August 26th. Is that going to be the same for a JJ Gale or a Luke Jacobs or anyone else who's on the card? Because the wrestling world will be watching this show. And like I say, everyone's going into it. They know they've got an opportunity to showcase themselves, to showcase British wrestling, to showcase Revolution Pro Wrestling. And there's also a lot of guys who are coming back who have Revolution Pro Wrestling has a very special place in their heart. And I'm talking about people like El Phantasmo, like Zack Sabre Jr., like Will Ospreay, and and there's more to come. It's a hint for you. But those people as well want to paint Revolution Pro Wrestling in the best light, want to help us continue to evolve and get to the next level, so the next version of themselves can come along, and it's just such an exciting part of the journey. And I genuinely say this, and it's not a sales pitch when I say this to fans who come along and support us on demand and buy our merchandise, etc. This isn't a sales pitch at all. Each and every single, and again, from the early days. So there's a fan on Twitter who's going through our shows from scratch on RevProOnDemand.com and putting up some pictures, and it's invoking a lot of great memories, some painful memories and some really great memories from back in the day. And I said to one of the fans who was commenting on one of the shows he went to in 2012, one of the early shows he went to, and they said literally, and he was saying about he purchased a front row ticket, which, as we've discussed, was a premium ticket. But in those days, the people who were purchasing the front row tickets, if they weren't purchasing tickets in those days, there would be no Rev Pro right now. So literally, every single person who's bought a ticket to our shows, who's supported us, is a pivotal part of our journey. And without them, it's not an exaggeration. Without them and without their support, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now. We wouldn't be able to be recognized on a worldwide stage, which we are. And we wouldn't be able to open the door for so many great professional wrestlers. And the wrestling industry, I say our fingerprints are over the entire wrestling world. And the wrestling industry, as we know it, wouldn't be the same without you. And I personally think that's something that's very special. And I think that's something that we can all be proud of. And I think that's something that people can get behind. And I hope that people have that mindset in supporting us on August 26th, and not just August 26th, but beyond. Because when August 26th is over and everyone's back home and we've had our big event, Revolution Pro Wrestling's back. The next week, the next Sunday, we're back in London. We're back at the 229, and our universe will continue. And we need everyone's support during that time. So, like I say, hopefully this is one of those things whereby we can start that wave of momentum. We can start that journey. And it's always been about one fan at a time. So if you're coming to the show, tell a friend. You know, if you're a wrestling fan who's got non-wrestling fan friends, and a point I was going to make at the beginning when I was talking about my journey into professional wrestling is with these British wrestling shows. I remember one of the shows I went to, we had the whole front row of about 20 seats with all my friends from school. And the next show came, next British wrestling show, and it wasn't very good, this show. Next British wrestling show came, and we had 4 people come along to the show because it wasn't very good. The next show came along, and I had one person come in. He pulled out on the day of the show, and I nearly didn't get to go to the show. But fortunately, my late father came to the rescue and took me to the wrestling show and created one of the most special moments for me and my dad that I ever had, and I still treasure to this day. So again, that's another reason why wrestling is so special to me, because it creates those moments. So to those parents and those kids, there's not a lot of things, especially speaking as a father of a young boy, there's not a lot of things that dad, like when kids are young, they often gravitate towards their mum. There's not a lot of stuff that that dads get to enjoy doing with their kids, that can be their special thing. And I see it so much, and especially when we do the holiday camps, and you see, you know, the dads come up to you and they talk to you, say, you know, like wrestling's our thing. You know, we watch the wrestling together, and so it's great to be able to come out and come to this wrestling show with my boy and or my girl, whatever. You know, this is our thing. This is, you know, dad and kid day. You know, and you know, wrestling's for everyone. I'm not suggesting that mums can't enjoy it as well, but you know, it's just an example of just one of those special things, right? But I firmly believe that if you bring a non-wrestling fan to one of our shows, you'll turn them into a fan. You don't have to bring them to one of our shows and be kind of like this, you know, cringing, because there's so many wrestling. I watch wrestling shows and I cringe a lot sometimes, right? But like, I can promise you, you're safe. Your non-wrestling fans, friends, and family are safe, right? And if anything, we can probably help you look like quite a normal person if you come along and bring them along, right? And we've seen it a lot across the years where people bring their partners, they bring their family, they bring their friends who aren't wrestling fans, and all of a sudden, you know, we start seeing that one ticket that was a regular start to become 2 or 3, because it is something that you can get invested in. It is something you can get behind. It is something that's a little bit different. It entails leaving the house, meeting new people, new experiences, and it's a lot of fun. So if there's one show to bring your friends along to, bring them along to the Copper Box or any Revolution Pro Wrestling show for that matter. Because again, I don't want to sell us short. I genuinely believe, in terms of what we deliver, I genuinely believe we deliver a product night in, night out. Doesn't matter what venue we're in. I do believe we deliver a high quality product that is worthy of eyeballs on it. So even if it doesn't have the big names on it, you're still seeing the same high quality.
Well, I am super excited for this show. Also, if I had to bet any money, I would put it on the Gail Fujita match myself. But if you haven't already, if you plan to be in the UK for All In weekend, make sure that you go to the Copper Box show held by Revolution Pro Wrestling. Tickets are still available. It's Saturday, August 26th. You can get your tickets on revolutionprowrestling.com. And if you don't plan on traveling, you can also sign up for their on-demand service, RevPro On Demand. And where can we follow RevPro and on everything?
So on Twitter, on X, we're at RevPro UK. We did threads for about 5 minutes. We're still trying to do it, but I don't really think it's taken off, has it?
It hasn't. I made one and I haven't used it since.
Yeah, I think everyone was angry for the day and pushing back, and I'm sure people would be angry that the title of Twitter's changed to X. But let's be honest, it's the biggest downfall of Twitter is some of the people that inhabit it. You know, a platform's only as good as its user, but there's for every bad tweeter or Xer, there's also 100 good ones, but unfortunately, it's human nature to focus on the one bad one. But yeah, spread positivity on the social media channels. But at RevPro UK, we're on Facebook, Revolution Pro Wrestling. Um, RevolutionProWrestling.com's got all the links. It's got the links to our training school in London and Portsmouth. We run regular beginner in Portsmouth. We run regular beginner classes weekly, but we also run courses for beginners in London and Portsmouth. If you want to take part in your wrestling journey, genuinely, it's never too late to give it a go. We do wrestling taster experiences. If you just want to feel what it's like and gain a further respect for wrestlers, it's all the information's on revolutionprowrestling.com, or at least the avenues you can go down. And of course, RevProOnDemand.com, very important for us. It's the backbone, the lifeblood of the wrestling promotion. It is, I can't understate it enough. Look, it's something that we've been developing for a long while. We are on the verge of being able to stream every show we run live. We currently stream about 80% of the shows we run live. And we're tweaking things to improve the quality. The Copperbox show will be streaming live on RevProOnDemand.com. It'll be included in your subscription price. The strategy is very clear. It's not a ploy. Obviously we could try and put it as a standalone pay-per-view and try to make like Bandits and run, but that's not our style. We don't want to hit and run. This is not a firework display. This is something we want to create regular fans. So we're inviting you to subscribe to our on-demand service. It's cheap. It's cheaper than the WWE Network anyway. So or Peacock, as you. I mean, it's not got as much. It's not got as much diverse entertainment as Peacock's got these days. That's a hell of a deal for everyone in America. But in terms of supporting the little guy and supporting professional wrestling, then RevProOnDemand.com. And like I say, the quality is improving. And what we want to do is we want to stream this event live. And look, every now and again there's a hiccup. We're all in-house, but the beauty of it is we get a very soon after the event, maybe half an hour or so after the event, a low-res version of the live stream is live. So if you can't wait, you can catch the action straight away if you've missed anything. But then the next day, a high-quality version goes up, and that's regardless of if there's any technical difficulties in the live stream or not. A high-res version will go up the next day. It's honestly great value for money. If you subscribe now, then we've got a 7-day free trial going on right now, so you'll get the first 7 days for free. But even between now and the Copperbox, for example, you'll get another free show. So next week we're in London. The week after we're in Southampton, and then we're in Portsmouth. With our rescheduled show, which was supposed to have taken place on Sunday, but someone inconsiderately got murdered outside the venue. Not a professional wrestling fan.
Oh, okay.
Wrestling, nothing to do with our event, but the night before.
Gotcha.
And it's one of the craziest experiences that we've had. We were literally setting up the show. We were there setting up, and the police cancelled the show after saying that it should be able to go ahead. The show got cancelled, so we had to reschedule it. But we'll be back there on the 20th of August, and then obviously the 26th is the Copperbox. And I believe due to that 7-day free trial, you'll also get the show the following week at the 229 included in that subscription price if you were to subscribe now. Now we'll probably take the 7-day free trial off just before the Copperbox show, because come on, you're getting quality. But what I will say is, the strategy is simple. We want you to sign up. We want you to see what we're all about. We want you to explore our back catalogue, and we want you to feel like, just for example, if you think that this is a worthy pay-per-view, I don't know how much people pay for pay-per-views these days, but it's a lot, right? And I feel that, for example, I don't know what All In or All Out's going to retail at, but say, for example, it's $50, and we're charging $9 a month, or maybe $8.49. I can't remember what the price is. But we're charging that. It's going to take you a lot of months before you even approach that price, and in that time, you're going to get a lot of shows. So if you like it, please stay on board, because the journey, we're just getting started, and we've got so much exciting stuff to announce between now and the end of the year as well. And it's all going to be on the service, as well as that extensive back catalogue. So look, we're not we're not grafting, we're not grifting, we're not and we're certainly not asking for free money. We believe we are offering a premium product, and we believe that our product is more than worth what we're charging for it. And if you believe that as well, look, we all would love, all of us would love something for free, right? Don't get me wrong, right? I hate more than anything when people pirate our shows when there's literally a 7-day free trial available on our service. Just give it a go, right? um, but we'd all love something for free, and we all think the world owes us something. But genuinely, we cannot succeed, we cannot thrive, we cannot move forward without people's support. So I say RevProOnDemand.com is a place to go. And it's the best place to support us if you can't be there live. So please check it out. And it's available on iOS and Android as well.
Yep. I am subscribed to RevPro on demand. I can confirm it's a very great service and it's a very great bang for your buck. And you can follow me at Lyric Wrestling on Twitter and now Instagram. And I will be live tweeting and posting for all of All In Weekend, including the Copper Box show. So if you can't attend, you can live vicariously through me. But thank you so much for this interview, Andy. It was so great having you. And I hope you all enjoyed this great insight to this amazing show that's about to take place in London. I'm excited. I hope you all are excited. And I look forward to the next possible interview that will come up on this podcast. So bye, everybody.